Thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you for all the speakers and for everyone who's here. I'm happy to share my insight on the things that have worked for me in online education, as well as some of the potential future impact that this field could have on online education. I'm going to share my screen right now, and please let me know if you're able to see my screen well.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Perfect. So I have been teaching in an online environment since 2017, and I come with a research background in an interdisciplinary field, which is nanotechnology, which itself has used AI for research applications. And I chose to teach in an online setting because I'm quite passionate about communicating science and math to students, and more so to non-traditional students who are usually typically older students who come back to school after a very long time and who are interested in continuing their education or pursuing a different career path and are wanting to come back to gain some additional skills. So I do that through this online remote environment, and it has been a challenging journey being able to engage students and keep them engaged, keep them on task, and more so during the pandemic. During the last 2 years, we have noticed an increased shift in going from a face-to-face modality to a virtual remote modality, where students were actually forced to be in front of a screen and to learn from a digital system rather than from that human-to-human interaction that we get to have in a traditional on-campus setting. With that shift, many challenges have arisen, and a lot of these challenges had to do with the expectations of what the student was expecting from the online environment, and how those expectations were sometimes not met due to the lack of tools that are made available to the teachers as well as to the students, in terms of the engagement, in terms of the communication, in terms of the feedback with that is given to the student. Personally, I have noticed, and these will be my points of discussion, that there's a great need for inclusion in remote learning, and I will be touching base on how AI can contribute, and also is already, to these specific points that I am discussing. There's a great need to ensure that the students are emotionally well. And I speak of students in all various of aspects. I'm speaking of students who are getting a degree. I'm speaking of students who are enrolling in an online course just for the sake of training. They could be already in pharma, they could be in medicine, they could be in human resources, in any different field, but they're going back to college for a couple courses. And I've witnessed that a lot of them during the pandemic were struggling, mainly because of what's been going on in their lives, and being able to stay on task was challenging with everything that's going on. So emotional well-being was a precursor for my classes. It was an important tool to keep, an important check for me to ensure before students are able to engage in the learning material and fully commit to the class tasks. There's a great need for student-focused learning. We received a great number of students all at once that were taking multiple classes at the same time, and they were enrolled in largely populated classes. That raised the question of how can we be more student-focused, individualized learning? How can we ensure that the student is getting his own specific learning tools that are tailored to meet his or her own needs. So there is a greater need for student-focused learning, and I will also speak of how AI can assist and can enhance that aspect of learning. Motivational communication is another aspect which, especially during the pandemic, I had practiced it. I have been practicing it for a very long time, but especially during the pandemic, this type of communication has been very, very successful in alleviating the stress of the digital screen, of the lack of interaction, of that gap between face-to-face interaction and online learning. And that's an aspect that takes a toll on instructors. It is an extra responsibility. It is an extra task on instructors, because besides all the things that they have to complete in terms of grading, in terms of feedback, in terms of communications through emails, they also do need to offer that as a helpful tool and as a successful tool to alleviate the stress and to keep the students engaged. I will give some perspective on the classes. The type of classes that we offer are highly accelerated classes. They are, whether it is on an undergraduate or graduate level, they are 8-week classes. So with an 8-week class where you would have to cover human anatomy and physiology, for instance, that's a highly accelerated class. It goes by really quickly, and there's a lot of content to cover each week. So to keep students on task and to keep them engaged, we need to embed some sort of tool that could help the instructors. And that tool is basically offering some sort of support to the student through motivational communication. There's also a great a role for AI in doing that. And I just included the bullet point here that I will be talking about how AI enhances all of the above in online education. So with inclusion, as I talk about inclusion, I talk specifically about the various age groups that I have in my class. I also talk about the various backgrounds, educational backgrounds. Some students are probably fresh out of high school or fresh out of college with a different degree and are wanting to do something else, or are wanting to develop their education in a different area. And so I have a range variety of students. I have international students whom I teach, other students who are local. So there are elements of inclusion that I personally focus on as part of our team. And we all do very similar formats in ensuring that there's inclusion in the classroom, ensuring that there is an emotional well-being that is being tested and touched base on and recognized. There's a student-focused learning. There's a motivational communication aspect that is tailored for individual students as well as the general classroom, and constant check-ins, opportunities that where the instructor makes it a point to check on the students on a regular basis. So all of these elements, if practiced properly in an online classroom, they could for sure enable the student to feel that he is included in an environment where it is safe to learn, and for an environment where there's potential for growth. How can AI support inclusivity in an online virtual learning environment? And with what we are doing currently, and online education is still challenged with that aspect, is how do you tailor feedback for individual needs, and how do you make the classroom not just about the entire 25 to 30 students that you have, but more so tailored to that individual student who you can pinpoint that he's challenging or she's challenging. She's challenged by the class material. She's not able to, or he's not able to stay on task or keep up with the pace of the class. So with that individual attention that we could gain to the student and to their own needs, then we will be actually offering a better and improved and enhanced learning model. And how can AI support that? Well, AI provides tools and systems that have been developed. I have referenced a paper at the end of this talk, and I encourage you to take a look at it. It provides some very important insight on some of the studies that have been done so far in including AI in online learning. But some of the aspects that stood out to me as I was doing my research and how I can implement it into my classroom is that there are systems that can be developed that could track students as they're doing their work, as they're answering the questions, and they could give them feedback based on the time that they took on specific questions, based on the strategies that they took to solve a math problem, and also based on the overall answer. And imagine how much work that would alleviate off of the professor, leaving them with more time to mentor the student. So that individualized attention, that specific feedback that's given to the students could really, really do wonders in an online setting, because it could really enhance the learning experience. There are also AI tools and systems that have been implemented to derive data, and we use that ourselves in Blackboard as the learning module that as the learning system that we use. We can derive data on how long the student was completing tasks on Blackboard, how long what did the student take to complete a specific problem versus the other, which could tell us really is this aspect more challenging? Perhaps the AI system could provide extra resources for the student in the final report that they could give the student after the student has completed the task. Maybe you need to develop more skill in differential equations, for instance, versus quadratic equations. So this kind of a system could track the student progress, could track their skills in an automated manner. So based on their performance and based on the amount of time they spent on a specific problem and based on the overall answer. So that report could be given to the student at the end, telling them, well, these are the areas that you need more work on, and these are the areas that you have done very well in. And this is all done automatically, not with the teacher's intervention. And this could be a very helpful tool in enhancing, again, the inclusivity model that we are trying to achieve in the online environment. Customized recommendations is really what I call it, and they are made for specific individual performances and progress. There are also AI systems that have been developed, and these are not widely available. As you know, this is a new field in online education, and it's still growing. But this tool could help detect changes in study and progress patterns. So as I've witnessed in the last year or so, students were able to complete some work at some time, but they did get to a kind of like a stage where they were hit hard by the pandemic, whether it's from their, losing a close or a dear friend or a family member, or perhaps losing their job, or perhaps having to teach and homeschool their children. So they got to the point where their progress really, really, really stopped, and they needed the support. And I saw that in a great number of students. And as an instructor, it took a great toll on me to be able to keep up with that. Although I was doing it happily, and I was happy to be able to assist and provide that support, but I also had other responsibilities in directing programs and in also keeping up with other classes. So if AI could take that kind of a tool or actually could take that responsibility and develop a tool where we can detect these sudden changes and perhaps provide support to the students without the teacher's intervention, that would be great. Emotional well-being was a very critical precursor for effective learning in my classroom. And in order to ensure that, we needed to create check-in opportunities with the student. And that, again, was completely done by myself. Check-in opportunities with specific students. Of course, I had general opportunity check-ins where I would email the students, or I would post a discussion board, or I would send an announcement. Please reach out to me if there's anything that I could do. There's motivational communication that was embedded in that. There were prayers that were embedded in those communication lines, but also there were specific check-in opportunities with students who were challenged with the pace of the class, also with the amount of material that has to be completed, especially during a time where COVID was taking a great toll on our lives. So we found that offering more guidance, offering more opportunities to sense the student's anxiety and act on it in various ways could really, really alleviate the stress early on in the learning journey and help make the student feel comfortable and more productive and more safe to complete their work. So when we relate with the student and when we offer that type of support, we tell them, well, we feel what you're going through. We know what you're going through. We know that this is challenging, and this is how we are available to help you. This alleviates the anxiety. It alleviates the stress, really acknowledging that it's there, helping them, relating to them, because we went through it as well. We all did, the entire world did. So we still are. Relating to them could really help connect, help you bridge that gap, because you don't have that face-to-face interaction, but it could bridge that gap and help you connect with your student, and then enhance their emotional state, or make them safe, that they're emotionally safe. Their anxiety, their stress is acknowledged, and we're here to support it. We're here to help alleviate it and to support them. So imagine how much that would be successful if we could develop a system that is capable of sending regular check-in opportunities, offering the students an opportunity to chat, perhaps with a chatbot. Tell me about your day. Tell me about how you're feeling right now. And all of these could be developed into a data table, into a data set that could be introduced to the instructor with some sort of idea of how many students are struggling, what needs to be done, and how can we do it. And AI could do great wonders in this area if it can be employed on a wide scale. Of course, I'm not saying that we are trying to get rid of the human factor with this application. No, it's actually a tool that would get data from the student and deliver it to the instructor for implementation and for action. So it would actually save the instructor a lot of time in trying to collect the data from the student, trying to collect and touch base and sense, where that could be done through an AI system. And that data could be populated into a statistical diagram, into into a weekly report that could be given to the instructor for specific implementation and action items. Another point here is student-focused learning, where we currently process that and implement that through weekly feedbacks on tasks that are individualized, that are tailored for individual needs, and also, you know, having that personalized communication, which bridges the gap due to the lack of face-to-face interaction, and also expressing empathy and communication can go a great way, and could, again, go back touching base on that emotional well-being state, could ensure that there's an emotionally well state for the student prior to them completing their tasks, which is very important. And so with all of that, AI could greatly contribute in ensuring that there is elements of inclusivity, there's a student-focused learning approach, and through the individualized systems that could be developed, and also ensuring that the students are their needs are met by helping the instructor gather all that information. We don't get to see them, but if we get to have that opportunity, that middleman kind of an opportunity where the system could deliver to us a lot of valuable information, we could act on it more effectively. And so another aspect of AI in supporting focused learning can be achieved through these various tools that some have been implemented and some have not yet, and they're still under research. Adaptive quizzes, these are quizzes that are tailored to student needs. And what do we mean by that? So when students complete a task, a weekly assignment in the class, their performance will get assessed by an AI system. This performance will get assessed in a way that the system will monitor their progress and their proficiency in each skill and each learning objective of that assignment, and will tailor their quizzes to help them master the ones that they need more work on, or the ones that they were challenged by. So these are very helpful. Some of them are some aspects of online adaptive quizzes is practiced nowadays in our division as well as others, but it could be a widely used model, which could be very helpful. AI scoring systems, fast AI scoring systems would be a great and helpful way to allow students to get their feedback very quickly and effectively with the feedback that they need. And AI systems have been and are currently being developed for that aspect. Virtual reality labs. This is something that I use currently for my biology as well as environmental science labs. These labs have been developed with virtual microscopes. The students don't have to purchase a physical microscope, for instance. They have virtual tools where they can manipulate various parts of the experiment online. And so these are very successful and these are very helpful for the students because they are giving them the opportunity to conduct a lab in a remote manner. They don't have to be present. They don't have to be available in a lab, especially for students who had to travel internationally during the pandemic, who had to leave the main campus. And in order not to put a halt on their education and on their progress in their education and to keep them on time for graduation, it's important to keep up with that. So offering virtual reality labs was very helpful. And there's a bunch of companies who sell lab kits for students who can perform their lab kits at home while also engaging in a virtual platform of experimentation. AI has been also proven to conduct outside the box and provide outside the box tutoring, which is actually tutoring systems and outside the box tasks and projects that are extremely helpful to help the student develop critical thinking skills, systems thinking and design thinking. For my interdisciplinary studies project, those are very helpful. Intelligent tutoring systems are also quite helpful because they offer tutoring 24/7 to the student on various aspects. They have a list of resources that could be implemented and provided to the student. And also AI-powered writing assistance tools, which could correct grammar, which could correct the cohesiveness and the structure of, can provide assistance and guidelines for that type of aspect as the student is writing their paper or writing their project or their presentation. As I also spoke about motivational communication, this is something that AI could help in and intervene in providing. I provide this on a regular basis to my students. I relate to them by sharing personal challenges and stories, and that goes a long way in cutting those, in alleviating the stress, calming them down, and helping them proceed with the class. So motivational communication could be highly standardized in a way that it could be provided on a regular basis every week through an AI assistance tool. So it has been shown to be very effective, and it has also, specifically in the pandemic season, has really lessened the overall stress of the students, and it has enhanced their learning performance and their learning experience. This is the reference that I was talking about, and I encourage you to take a look at it if you're interested in the topic, and if you're interested in higher education and specifically in a remote environment. They have some very useful tools that they've mentioned, and some that are still under study, and some that are being implemented. But it's helpful to kind of think about how we can improve the overall experience of the student. I am open to questions if you have any, and thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Effat, for the wonderful presentation. So I'll just move on for the delegates. Like, if you're having any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box. Okay, I see that there were two questions in the chat box. Okay. Do you believe that the use of AI in education reduces cost?
I believe that it could have an impact on costs because, instructors won't be spending as much time on certain tasks, and that could alleviate some of their work. So I do think, yes, we have also been trying and to pilot some AI and virtual learning tools for the student to avoid having them purchase. Sorry, my baby is in the background. Having them to purchase textbooks and all of that. So I do believe it will.
Okay, and the second question is, how can we add the human touch and maintain student retention?
Very good question. So again, I mentioned during my talk, I'm not trying to get rid of the complete human factor and the instructor in this way. I'm trying to think of ways where we could have a messenger, a middle tool that could help in a way alleviate some of the work off of the instructor, but still the human instructor is responsible for implementation. So absolutely, we are trying to add some tools to increase the learning, to enhance the learning experience, but at the same time, we're not trying to take away the human factor, the instructor, the one person who will reach out to the student if they're struggling. But if we're able to collect data more effectively, then we are able to teach more effectively. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah. Yes. And also, I could see one more question, like, what are the challenges related to online learning to be wary of?
Well, there are some very important challenges, is mainly that lack of ability in the lack of ability in keeping up. Okay, sorry, just give me a minute. So there are challenges in terms of keeping up with students' progress in a accelerated manner. So when they are enrolled in an 8-week class, there's a great amount of material to keep up with. So that's one of my challenges. And that's a very important challenge that I went through personally, keeping up with their progress.
Okay. So I do personally have a question. Even
Yes.
I'm having a kid of 5 years old. Since this pandemic, we all are going through this online education, even for the kids, even for the kindergarten and the pre-primary kids. So during this online education, how do you come to know that what type of learner he is? Like my son, he's mostly learns when he listen, and few students learn when they write. So how can you just like identify what type of a learner he or she is?
Very good question. So with what I do and with the elements of inclusivity that I have spoken about, another very important thing that we are trying to achieve in the future, currently we're trying to work on, and also in the future, is to tailor the learning tools and activities for student needs. So some students learn more effectively in a virtual manner. Some students can tell you that they have met their learning objectives in writing versus others that could actually present that they have perfected it in a video. So for us to know, it's for us to provide various assessment tools. So various assignment tools based on what the student feels comfortable. So for instance, a student can feel comfortable telling us that they have mastered learning objective 1 in a paper or in a video that they record themselves presenting. So that's kind of the new focus in online education, is to include students based on the various neurodiversity. The students present various skills and they're neurodiverse. So in order to meet their needs and in order to enhance their learning experience, in order to make it more effective, we have to meet their needs. So giving them that option to deliver to assess them and deliver their specific learning objectives to us will really help us know where their weaknesses lie and where their strengths lie.
Okay, and one more question: how this online education can help this emotional disorder students, like how it can support them?
So very good question. It is their instructor's responsibility to ensure that there's emotional well-being from the start. And also, if there are specific cases where the student needs additional help, we have established an additional department that is focused for this specific purpose and for ensuring the emotional well-being of the student and counseling the students. So we usually refer them to that department for additional assistance with, and that's basically because there are specialists there who could help us. But if it's something that is due to stress of life and due to things that are happening in life as it was happening in the pandemic, then we could help as instructors.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering all our questions and being patient with us. And it was really a wonderful presentation. And definitely, we have learned a lot consent to this online education. So,
Thank you.
uh,
Thank you, everyone, again.